Priyanka, and you should really stop calling us sir. Makes us feel a little old. But yeah, on that, it's always great to talk to people on a Saturday evening at 9 p.m. our time. I see a couple of friendly faces as well. In fact, one of my schoolmates that I haven't spoken for about a decade now, and my UCLA batchmate who I spoke with, I think, yesterday. I also Kanchan, whom I spoke with a few weeks ago from Pragmatic. So hi to everyone, and thanks for taking your time out today. I do want to go back to the question that Yasha and Shastri asked. I think these are very good questions that the both of you posed, but I think I'll cover this up and then move on to giving my take on what you've asked for. So with that said, when Praveen and Rono were providing their views and their walkthrough, I kind of found myself nodding to multiple things that they spoke about, specifically about Rono's views on the need to move to a strategic thinking, which is outcome-based thinking rather than output-based thinking. And then when Praveen spoke about the opportunity areas for, Rono's views on the strategic thinking. And when Praveen spoke about the opportunity areas for digital transformation in many industries out there, I think I couldn't agree again with him more when he says this, because there are multiple industries out there that still are awaiting to be, I dare say, disrupted, but definitely that are waiting to be digitally transformed. And retail is one of them. All this is great news to us product folks, because this only means that there are amazing opportunities out there. And again, they will continue to be so, because product manager is probably not one of those roles that can be automated. In fact, NASSCOM, probably some of you are aware of this. NASSCOM has a vision to create 50,000 product managers in India in the near term. So all this is obviously good news for us product folks. That also makes it one of the most sought out fields out there for freshers as well as experienced professionals, because again, you're all out here listening to us on a Saturday evening. So there is a lot of interest in the product management discipline. But there is also a certain degree of ambiguity around product management and specifically the roles within it, and what skill sets are required to flourish in in the product manager discipline. So for example, everybody seems to have their own definition of what product management really is, and ambiguity doesn't really help. I've even heard people call us as everything profession, which is true. We do everything. We juggle a lot of critical things. There's not one particular thing that we have to be good at. We have to be a generalist. There are again multiple role definitions: product owner versus product manager. Product manager in Google are more engineering focused. Product managers in Microsoft are called program managers. A PM in Airbnb is typically the same, has similar competencies as a senior product manager in LinkedIn or a head of product in an early stage company. So a lot of things all over the place. In addition, to make things more complex, the skill sets that are required is different too. So some need tech skills, some need deep functional domain skills, some need you to be an expert generalist, whatever that means. So it's a bit of an oxymoronic statement there, but there you go. That's what we probably are, an expert generalist. So with all this said, there is one fact that is pretty clear. Whatever you've learned to be a good or even a great product manager is not enough for you to be even a decent product leader. And I say that a little directly and probably a little bluntly as well, because there exists a lot of invisible traps that that you cannot really see until you really fall into one of those traps. And these kind of traps entrap many good product managers from making the transition. So what I'll probably take you through today for the next 25, I try and keep time, but 25 to 30 odd minutes, is to probably talk about some of my, how my journey has been, and what are the traps that I have seen and how I've identified them and how I've tried to circumnavigate them. So that's probably the next 20, 25 minutes. So let's begin with what most of you would expect out of a product career, or how the product manager's career progresses. So typically you start as an associate product manager and you progress to a product manager. Then you would expect to go into a senior product manager role. And then you would want to get into one of the product leadership roles, be it a group product manager, a product lead, associate director, a VP, a head, say whatever the roles are. So you get into people management / product leadership roles. But it doesn't get that. This is probably the journey you expect. But the reality is something like this. There is a chasm, and the chasm is real. I was quite happy when I saw the title of this session, which is about crossing the chasm of product managers itself. oftentimes people get stuck. Why is that? Because product leaders are not judged by their own success. Product managers are judged by their own success, but product leaders aren't. Product leaders are judged by their ability to influence up, to influence across, and to influence outside. So to do this, you need a whole new sets of skills. So it's about taking the entire organization upwards, and that's a new skill. And that's the chasm that you would see. So when you have to move from a senior product manager to product leadership role, most of you would have heard or listened to Crossing the Chasm by the amazing Jeff Moray. But that chasm exists in our product management careers as well, such as learning skills to take the entire organization upwards. Bringing an outside in thinking to complement the inside of thinking is a new skill. You've got to learn that as well. You probably do that a bit in your job, but you do it in a whole different level as a product leader. Letting go is a new skill. As a product manager, you probably want to or need to be in control of certain things, but as a product leader, you need to let go. Spotting the forest instead of focusing on the trees is a new skill, because as a product manager, you're so focused on the one objective, be it a North Star or be it the success metrics that you've defined. And I'm not specifically talking about features, because you shouldn't be looking at features as your main thing. But you kind of, by the design of the role, you do not look at a bigger picture as to how does certain decision impact the entire portfolio, if not the entire industry. So learning that is a new skill, spotting the forest instead of focusing on the trees. Providing a safety net for people to fail is also a new skill. As product, everybody probably, you've heard that you need to fail fast to learn fast. But who likes failure here? No, nobody does. But then again, there's just no other way. If you're building a product, it means you are in uncharted territories. If you're building something that you already know will succeed, you're building a solution. You're not building products. So with uncharted territories, there is equal probability of failure to success. But when somebody does fail, when your product managers do fail, you need to provide an environment, or rather you need to create a safety net for them to fail and learn from it and move on from there. So with all this, transition to product leader is not a progression of a product manager. I think that's something that I want to leave you with. Getting better at being an associate product manager would take you to be a product manager. Getting better at being a product manager would take you to a senior product manager. You can't continue doing what you do extremely well to be a product leader. You've got to do something else. Being in control is something that you've learned as a product manager, but losing control is what you need to learn as a product leader. Losing control and democratizing control is a new skill that you have to learn as a product leader as well. So as you see, transitioning from a product to a product leader from a product manager, I believe, is not by continuing to do well at your current role, but it is a whole new role in itself, which needs a unique combination of skills that require to unlearn certain instinctive reflexes. So this kind of creates a chasm for people to cross. So what is this chasm? How do PMs cross this chasm? How and why some of them get stuck? What is required to cross this chasm? These are some of the things that we'll speak about today. Rona and Praveen already broached upon some of the skills that you would need to cross this chasm. I'll kind of steer past that in the interest of time. I'll try and add a few more. I've been making some amendments to the slide as we spoke today because they've covered a bit of it. I want to focus on a few things that you probably haven't heard of, hopefully. So let's start with how to cross a chasm. I'd like to keep things simple. And I think starts with completely understanding a basic fact. And in my belief, you knowing this fact and you accepting this fact is probably contributing to a long way for you to cross a chasm. So what is that fact? That is what you got here, or rather what got you here will not get you to where you want to go. It's pretty anticlimactic, I know, apologies, but that's the simple fact. Whatever you did to get to where you got, which is as a senior product manager, you continuing to do the same things, but better, exponentially better, will still not get you to where you want to get to, which is a product leader role. Most of them probably know this, but you need to apply this consciously. So how I'd like to kind of present an app visual. I really like Visualize Value. It's a Twitter account. This kind of summarizes what I spoke about. You might be thinking you've been a full circle in terms of your skill sets as a product manager, I know you're not able to see my pointer. Let me just quickly. Yeah, you might be thinking you've got all the skills as required as a good product manager, and you probably do, but they still are just a tip of the iceberg for a product leader's role, and that's by design. So let's go back to what we were talking about. Sorry, seems to be some trouble. Okay. Can I have to share my screen again? Murphy's Law, huh? Has to. Okay. One moment. There. Yeah, you should see my screen again. So just to go back to that simple fact, which is what got you here won't get you there. So why is it so? Does it mean you need to learn completely new sets of skills? Yes, but not necessarily. It all lies in making certain conscious cognitive switches. To understand what those conscious choices are and what cognitive switches you need to make, let's first look at some more relatable things. Let's talk about what makes a good product manager. So a good product manager are, of course, there are many skill sets to be a good product manager. I've tried to keep the top four, and I've bucketed them under these four items. At a high level, you are, sorry, yeah, you have a complete knowledge of your product. You are the go-to person for your product. You are extremely good at the job. There's no one who can do this job better than you. You are delivering, you continue to deliver, although you're bound by various constraints, be it resourcing constraints, engineering constraints, budget constraints, pressure from the very apt cartoon strip that Rono showed on in the last page. Pressure from upward on what to build and what not to build, why to build and why not to build. You've got all these constraints, but yet you continue to deliver. And of course, gaining visibility for yourself as well as gaining visibility for the product. These are the things that make a good product manager. Of course, there are many more, but I'd like to keep it at this level because this kind of encapsulates everything, isn't it? So you are considered the go-to person to your product. There's probably nobody who knows the product better than you, the past, the present, the future. You own the roadmap, you own the current features that are going in, you know what context was there and why certain things were done the way they were done. And you have all the things, all the toolkits that you need to be good at your job. You know who to talk to, and you know which customer needs which particular feature and when you want to deliver all these things. You know this, and you know how to meander through all the maze that is to deliver to the outcome that you've decided. Within the boundaries that have been created. But this is a little different to how, or rather what defines a good product leader. Where I see the difference is from moving from having complete knowledge of your product, you need to make that switch to having a wide knowledge across multiple products, across all the portfolio. So you shouldn't ideally have knowledge about one specific product, but you need to have wide knowledge across all the products in your portfolio. You need to switch from being extremely good at the job to empowering others to be good at their jobs. So you move from an individual contributor role to a people leader role. I hate the word people manager. So people leader, or you start empowering people. And you empower people to fail, and you empower people to flourish. So you progress, you achieve success through people's success. So you've got to make that switch. You got to make a switch from delivering, though you're bound through various constraints, to strategical resource planning and influencing others. You've got to influence your peers now. You've got to influence them to allocate budgets. You've got to influence your peers, let's say the engineering peer, to make sure that there is alignment in what you set out to do, what the roadmap is out there. So rather than being constrained by boundaries, you define the boundaries now, and you have got to strategically plan what those boundaries should be, because boundaries by definition are creates friction, but you need the boundaries because in some cases boundaries create focus. And you need to switch from gaining visibility for yourselves and your product to you need to now gain visibility for your entire organization. All these again need different skill sets, and this is the switch that you need to make from a product, a outcome or an outcome, to the entire portfolio of products that is under the challenge or the capability that you are looking to build. And you need to move to moving from one specific role or one visibility to the entire organizational visibility. You need to start being extremely good at execution, and you need to move to being extremely good at inspiring people. So let's talk about how you can consciously make these switches. It's easier said than done, right, isn't it? So, but what this basically means is you need to switch from an I model to a T model and beyond. I'll explain what this means. Some of you may know this, so I'll keep this a little quick. We're also just about at the time I have, so another 15 odd minutes is what I think I should take. But we start with the breadth of experience in one axis and the depth of knowledge in the other axis. These are important factors. You've got a breadth of experience, you've got, let's say, 15, 16, 17, 10 years of experience, and then you've got deep functional knowledge in one area. That's typically what is an I model, or I shape. We are historically taught to excel in a field. I am a complete, I can completely dismiss that, because I don't think humans are built to do one thing alone and do that extremely well. Some people choose to do that, and that is perfectly all right. I respect that decision. But what this means is we spend a lot of time getting deep expertise in one area. Think about the people whom you know who have spent many years and sometimes even decades in certain practices, such as, like, let's say the erstwhile banking sectors. We have people doing the job for 20, 30, 40 years even, and they retired in the job. That is the I model. So we've historically been a race which flourished in one type of expertise. This can also be called as an inch wide and a mile deep kind of a model, where you have expertise in a specific discipline, and you have extremely good expertise in that discipline. But what I think we should have as a bare minimum from a product manager's perspective in the discipline is a T model. This, I think, is a bare minimum, but I still do not think it's enough. A T model is where you start widening your breadth of knowledge, widening your knowledge in the sectors that you have. This, I think, like I said, is a bare minimum. You need to have a deep knowledge of certain area and branch out to other discipline, which is, let's say, a few inches wide, but still a mile deep. But what I think you all need to transition to is a pie model, which is a few more inches wide. You now have a good perception of what are the industry that you're working with and the different disciplines in the industry that you work in. And you have a fair enough depth of knowledge in those disciplines as well. Now, this puts most of you at an advantage, because not many are in this model. Most of the big organizations are moving their talent from the I to T, and some of them are moving from the T to pi. So you moving to a pie model, which means you have multiple expertise in multiple, or rather deep expertise in multiple disciplines, will put you at an advantage. Finally, the utopian goal is to move into what is called a comb shape model, which is a mile wide and a mile deep. This is literally limitless potential. So can this be achieved? Maybe a few will, maybe a few can, but this is probably a utopian goal. And the reason I call it a utopian goal is it's extremely deep knowledge in wide variety of subjects, which not many people have. So for example, this is you being able to conduct an orchestra and be the best product leader ever possible, while you're also a Wimbledon champion in a tennis, of course, tennis, a Wimbledon champion. Not many can. So, but that's utopian goal. At least I feel it's a utopian goal. I can probably settle for a pie model, which is this, which should be your starting point. You'll have to kind of self-assess to see where you are. Are you an I? Are you in T? Are you in a pie? And then make those calls. I'll probably talk to you maybe can take some questions later on to see how I can help you with that self-assessment tools. To do this, right, you need certain skill sets. So what are those skill sets? So let me classify these skill sets into primary pillars. So the first primary pillar, which all of you know as soft skills, but I don't like the term soft skills because they are real skills. Soft skills kind of degrades what they are. For a product manager's real skills are real. You do need these real skills to flourish in the role. Uh, Business acumen, that's another pillar that you've got to be extremely good at. Uh, Domain intellect is another pillar that you need to be good at, and technical intellect. That is one of the last pillars that I have for you that I think you should be good at. Again, the word technical, I use it a little differently, and I'll talk to you about it when we get there. So let's first talk about the real skills. First one, which is literally a job, that is communication. I would argue that communication is the single most important thing of a product leader as well as a product manager. You got to get really good at communications. You need to be, when I say communication, it is about ensuring that, what does communication do? Communication aligns the entire organization towards one specific thing. And that is the single most important thing that you do as a product leader. And you need to really build up on your communication skills. And that doesn't mean that you need to be the best English speaking person out there in the world. That is not what it means. It means that you're articulate enough and you're eloquent enough when you make a conversation, and you are, you take, or rather you focus on the right things to say and don't say it around the bush. So you got to say what it is, and you also got to say what it isn't. Strategy is almost, when Rono spoke about strategy, one of the things that I made a mental note to tell the group is strategy is often what you decide to do, but a big part of strategy is also articulating what you will not do. So I think that is extremely critical, and that's extremely critical to be communicated to create alignment. The next one is empowering people. Empowering people is trickier than it sounds. As a PM, you are probably an individual contributor, but now you've got to manage people. You've got to mentor them. You've got to guide them. You've got to give them feedback. You've got to care about their future. You've got to care about their certain personal circumstances as well, because that impacts their work. And you've got to empathize with that. You've got to learn the art of delegation. You've got to set goals, and you also have to kind of decipher or craft means to measure those goals and come up with the results. You've got to hire, and in cases, you've got to also manage people out. All this comes around empowering people. And I'm a big believer of the single most important job of a product leader is that of removing impediments for your people. You're not there to tell the people or your people what they need to do. They already know that. You've got to make sure that the obstacles that are in their way, you remove those obstacles for them. That, I think, is the single most important job of a product leader. So you've got to get good at empowering people. You can start practicing in small things right now as a product manager. You can start working with, start letting go of certain things with the designer and make sure that they understand why, and then they go ahead and do it on their own, because you've got to democratize control. You can't be in control all the time. Being comfortable in uncomfortable situations. Again, one of the most important skills that you need to get. You probably have some of these skills already as a product manager, but a product leader is probably the most, when I say the most, you probably have the responsibility to take the entire organization along with you. And you've got to make sure that the entire organization is moving at the same pace with the correct alignment. It sounds like a Herculean task. It probably is as well. But that is the job. That is the job of a product leader or a product person. To flourish, you've got to kind of step away from thinking that you're the answer provider to being the question asker and then the answer seeker. You've got to move away from this mode that I like what I think it was Rono who said about being proud of the feature you build. No, you should move away from being proud of the feature you built, and you need to start getting proud about the problem you identified that led to the feature being built. So you need to ask more questions and get the answer from someone else. You've got to let go of that emotional connect to the pride that you feel in solving something. You got to get extremely, you've got to start being extremely proud that we all together as an organization solve the right problem. There could be multiple ways to solve the problem. And this is why I want to talk to Shastri about why you shouldn't really dwell too deep into what your competitors are doing. In some cases, the competitors are playing a game. And I don't say that as a political game. There is a game theory. You should read about some case studies about how Ryanair came in. Ryanair is a budget airline in the UK. How Ryanair came in the early 80s, I think, and how the prevalent really big players, including British Airways and United Airlines, how they let Ryanair become big because they didn't know what Ryanair was doing, because Ryanair said something and did something else. So if you're following the strategy of what your competitors are saying, they're not fools. They're probably saying things that they want you to hear, but they do something else. So you've got to learn to, one, take the entire organization with you and be comfortable in these uncomfortable situations. And finally, you've got to build trust and respect. I think this is the single most important thing that product leaders should do. These are the two things that you need, but it diminishes in value when you ask for it. You can't ask people for, trust me, I'll get this done. You got to respect me. You really can't ask for these things, but you need to build it. That is, you need to build relationship. You need to invest in building relationships. You can start with building the relationship with your engineering leads, the people that you work with day in and day out. But when you start becoming a product leader, you've got to start moving into a kind of a different mindset, which is the concept of a first team. Interestingly, I was talking to the VP of engineering in my organization just last week, and he also brought this up, the concept of a first team, and I thought it's good to share this with you. So let me just pause and quickly digress to what is meant by a first team. Building a first team mindset basically means you prioritize the team you are in over the team you lead, which means if as a product leader, your peers are your first team, not the people who report to you. Why is that important? Because the first team is, when you make your first team as the leaders in the organization, you start having a business perspective and not a narrow vertical of your organization perspective. Product leaders means they are leaders. And what do leaders do? Leaders lead the entire organization. They just don't lead a section of it. They are bothered about what's happening in the marketing division. They are also bothered about what's happening in the sales division. You've got to be bothered about it because you've got to fix and identify problems and solve those problems along with the other leaders in your organization. So your first team really are the leaders in the organization, not necessarily the members who report to you. So it was kind of, it's best articulated by Patrick Lencioni. I think that's how he pronounces his last name. But if you just search for Patrick and first team, you can read more about it. It's basically the idea that true leaders prioritize supporting their fellow leaders over their direct reports, that they're responsible to their peers more than they are responsible to the individuals who report to them. So you got to build this first team mindset. That then once you start doing this and start practicing some of this in your current job, people start taking notice, and that's how you can cross the chasm, because you've got to let people show that you are moving, you're making the transition. All right, let me quickly move to the next one, which is building the business acumen. There's a huge misnomer that MBAs make great product managers. I've got no qualms about MBAs or no disrespect to the MBAs. I mean, they have struggled a lot to get to where they got to, but that is a misnomer. But what is really, I mean, what couldn't be more correct is product managers are first business managers. So they need to have business acumen. What does that mean? Again, business acumen includes things such as, how do you enhance margins? What does that mean? Enhancing margin means, how do you ship things that are profitable? How do you monetize things? How do you make sure that whatever you do are profitable? How do you connect business strategy to the product portfolio? This is again an extremely important aspect of a product leader. You've heard about product roadmaps and strategies, and Rono and Praveen both spoke about being a strategic product leader. It's about, how do you take the business strategy? And the business strategy could be, we need to grow 5x this year. We need to onboard 10x this year. That is a business strategy. It could be a business strategy, or it could be something else. But you need to understand what the business strategy is. We need to be the best in the entire industry. You take that business strategy and you deliver that through the product strategy. And then from the product strategy, which defines the what you're doing and the why you're doing, you take it forward to creating certain initiatives within your organization as to these are the initiatives or these are the massive projects that you'll run this year to fulfill that particular goal that the business has set. And each of those initiatives will follow under what is basically the roadmap that you'll deliver, because the roadmap talks about the when something is coming, the initiatives and the strategy talks about the what is coming and the why we are doing it. So you need to ensure that each and every team member is aware of that connection between how a business strategy is aligned to adding a single button on your product, because that needs to be connected. If it's not connected, then that's room for people coming and sneaking in things and people doing things which does not necessarily cater your business strategy or your business goals. You need to neutralize your competitors' edge over you. We spoke about competitors as well, and this is important. There are again two schools of thought. The one school of thought which talks about monopolizing and just don't bother about your competitors, to other school of thought where you need to keep constant track of your competitors. Again, it completely depends on which industry you're in, but competitors are real. So you've got to neutralize your competitors' edge over you. And there are ways to do that, and we'll probably talk about that in the question and answer session. And finally, you need to build business models. Again, going back to what Praveen and Bruno were talking about, you need to build business models, you need to build pricing strategies, and you need to build alliances. By alliances, I mean you need to build partnerships with outside folks, you need to build partnerships with inside folks. So let's move on to the third one, which is the domain intellect, which is also the domain knowledge. But let me first clarify by what I mean by domain intellect. This means having a clear understanding of the industry you're in, understanding the players within that industry, your customer segments, and your customers' nuances, and even your customers' idiosyncrasies. And then you need this. Why do you need all this knowledge? You need this to craft visions and strategies. Because as a product leader, you do that. You are a visionary. So how are you a visionary? You can't be a visionary without understanding your customers. Steve Jobs is a great example of a visionary. He told the customers what they wanted when the customers didn't even know that they wanted it. So he could really think far ahead. I mean, that doesn't come without having a deep understanding of customers, their idiosyncrasies, who are the eccentric ones, what are the things that work for some, what are the things that do not work for some, whom should you be bothered about, whom should you ignore, things like that. So how do you build domain intellect? You probably build by following visionaries. That's a very good start. You look at people out there, and there are certain leaders, product leaders out there that you can follow on Twitter. They are still alive, and you can follow them on Twitter, and you can use this as your continuous learning exercise. Get a mentor. I can't emphasize this on this enough. Everybody needs a mentor. I mean, I also have my own set of mentors, and I reach out to them every now and then, and they give me really good feedback. And I think you need to have a view of who your mentors are. You need to study competition, and you need to talk to your customers. End of the day, without talking to your customers, you can't do much. So you need to be talking to your customers. So a lot of people argue that domain intellect is probably the most difficult thing to do or to get. I disagree. This is true with building intellect. Building intellect is always a learnable trait. Building relationship, on the other hand, is much more difficult. There's a lot more unknowns in that, and it takes nurturing, it takes time to build relationships, but it does reap you multifold benefits when it's done right, because having a good relationship with your engineering lead can also make sure that when you falter with the technical knowledge, the engineering person will forgive you because you've got a good relationship with that person. So this brings us to the final pillar, which is the technical skills or the technical intellect. Again, I use technical as a broad term. When I say technical, I relate it to a product within the product discipline. It's about the arts and crafts, the frameworks and the techniques used within the product discipline, not necessarily the R's and Pythons and TensorFlows of the world. So there are many debates on whether PMs need tech skills. I'm on the end that says you need just enough tech skills to have a conversation with the engineering team so that you or the lack of your technical skills doesn't slow down the process. So just enough is what you need. What that means is you understand your technical landscape. You know what tech stack is used and why the tech stack is used. You understand the decisions behind that. UX is another one of those technical or rather one of those techniques that you need to be extremely comfortable with. Everybody is looking for a great experience right now, and you need to be delivering that. Product development lifecycle, the multiple ways to build products, and you need to find out what best fits your organization. Frameworks are there to be tweaked. Famous last words, I think, but you need to make sure that a framework that you use is fit for purpose within your organization. You don't fit your organization to a framework because the organization's cultures are different. Its organization is a living organism. So you've got to make sure that the framework you bring in is fit for purpose for your organization. And finally, you need to look at the process, methods, and frameworks that are there. And you need to make sure that you are there to take calls about what is working, what is not working. Something that I want to talk about is building things such as inclusive design. I'll talk about that in the last slide for the day, which is, okay. Final words, periodically assess. What this means is you've got to assess yourselves, and you've got to assess about your areas of improvement, and you've got to work towards bettering them. So you've got to assess your strategies, you've got to assess your competitors, your market, your customer dynamics, and everything. So you've got to periodically take stock of what's happening. If there's one place where things aren't a constant, it's here in product management. You've got to think beyond your team. We spoke about the first team concept, and you've got to think beyond your team. Your team, yes, of course, you need to think about them, but that's a no-brainer. But you've got to think beyond them. You've got to think about your leaders. You've got to think about your competitors. You've got to think about the market. You've got to obviously think about your customers. You've got to think strategically, but you've got to execute tactically. So be strategic in your thinking, but be tactical in your execution. Don't execute things that takes months and months. Govern, not control. So one of the things that I keep saying a lot of people is you get control by giving control. Sounds weird, but nothing could be farther from the truth. Building an autonomous environment only builds trust in the entire process, and who wouldn't want to be in an autonomous environment? So you've got to obviously govern. So govern is more important than having control. You've got to be responsible. As product leaders and product managers, you've got a massive authority as to how the decisions that you take can impact a lot of lives. And as a matter of fact, when we're talking about being inclusive, there is a need to be responsible for people who access your platform. So if there is differently able people, if there is, let's say, a blind person who needs to access your platform, how can they? You need to design for people of every abilities to be able to access your platform. So you need to be responsible because you owe it to your customers. And finally, ship. Nothing progresses without shipping. So ship features, ship capabilities, ship outcomes. I'm going to stop here because I want to keep this interactive, and I think we can start taking some questions now.